does it take to remain righteous in a world drowning in wickedness? Today we delve into the extraordinary story of Shem, Noah's firstborn son, a tale that challenges everything you thought you knew about faith, leadership, and divine purpose. This isn't just another biblical narrative. Shem's story represents a unique moment in human history, the only documented account of someone who witnessed both the pre-flood world and the birth of all modern civilizations. His life spans an astounding 600 years, making him a living bridge between two distinct epochs of human existence. To bring you this comprehensive analysis, I've spent years studying ancient Hebrew texts, archaeological findings, and theological commentaries. This presentation synthesizes insights from the Dead Sea Scrolls, traditional rabbinic literature, and modern scholarly research, offering you perspectives that rarely appear in conventional religious discussions. By the end of this video, you'll understand how one man's faithfulness shaped the destiny of nations. The profound connection between Shem's life and modern religious identity. Practical lessons for maintaining faith in a changing world. The hidden influence of Shem's legacy on contemporary monotheistic faiths. More importantly, you'll discover how Shem's story directly relates to your own journey of faith and purpose in today's challenging world. Let's begin by stepping back into a world on the brink of divine judgment, where Shem's extraordinary journey would soon unfold. Part 1. Early life and the pre-flood world. Imagine being born into a time so corrupt that the creator of the universe declares he will wipe out all living creatures save for a single family. This was the world into which Shem, the eldest son of Noah, entered, a world teetering on the brink of divine judgment. From the moment of his birth, Shem's life was destined to be extraordinary, not because of any wealth or power, but because of the unparalleled task his family was chosen to undertake. Born into a household that stood alone in its faithfulness, Shem was thrust into a narrative of both destruction and redemption, carrying the weight of God's plans for humanity on his shoulders. Shem's early years were spent in a world spiraling into chaos. His father, Noah, was a man of unwavering faith, described in Scripture as righteous and blameless among the people of his time. Noah's household was an anomaly in an era defined by rampant sin, idolatry, and violence. Shem, as Noah's firstborn, was raised with an acute awareness of the stark contrast between his family's obedience to God and the moral decay surrounding them. Alongside his two brothers, Ham and Japheth, Shem grew up hearing the stories of God's creation, the fall of man, and the promise of redemption. These lessons were more than family lore. They were the foundation upon which Shem's character and destiny would be built. The world in which Shem lived was nothing short of a spiritual wasteland. Humanity had turned its back on God, trading righteousness for corruption. The earth was described as being filled with violence, with every inclination of the human heart perpetually bent toward evil. It was a time when morality was not just ignored, but actively scorned, and the ways of God were abandoned in favor of self-indulgence and lawlessness. In such an environment, Shem's family was a beacon of light, a solitary remnant of faith in an otherwise darkened world. Noah's obedience to God set the tone for his household, and Shem, as his eldest son, bore witness to the tension between his family's devotion and the ridicule they endured from their neighbors. As the eldest of Noah's three sons, Shem occupied a position of responsibility and privilege within the family. His brothers Ham and Japheth each had their unique roles, but Shem's proximity to Noah positioned him as both a confidant and an apprentice. Together, the three brothers formed a bond that would prove essential in the years to come as they worked alongside their father to fulfill an unprecedented divine command. Yet within the unity of the family there were undercurrents of complexity. Ham, whose actions later in life would invite a curse upon his descendants, already displayed signs of impulsiveness, while Japheth often took a more reserved and thoughtful approach. Amid these dynamics, Shem emerged as a steady and faithful presence, embodying the principles Noah instilled in his sons. The moral decay of the pre-flood world served as a constant backdrop to Shem's early life, shaping his understanding of humanity's need for redemption. He witnessed firsthand the consequences of living apart from God, as communities descended into chaos and violence became the norm. This environment not only reinforced the importance of his family's faith, but also deepened Shem's sense of purpose. He understood that his family's survival was not just about preserving their lives, but about preserving the hope of humanity's restoration. As the wickedness of the world reached its apex, God revealed his judgment to Noah, a flood that would cleanse the earth of its corruption. For Shem, this divine proclamation marked the moment when everything he had been taught, everything he had witnessed, and everything he believed would be put to the ultimate test. But before the waters would rise, there was work to be done, a massive undertaking that would challenge not only Shem's physical strength, but also the very core of his faith. The construction of the ark loomed on the horizon, and with it, the greatest test of obedience the world had yet seen. Part 2. The Ark, a testament of faith. Picture a world where wickedness had reached its zenith, where every thought of human hearts bent toward evil. In this darkened landscape, the ark arose, not merely as a vessel of wood and pitch, but as a monument to unwavering faith. For Shem, Noah's firstborn, this massive construction project would become the defining challenge of his early life, a test of faith that would echo through millennia. The Divine Commission. The biblical record tells us God's instructions were precise and overwhelming in scope. 3 stories high, built to specific dimensions using gopher wood, sealed with pitch inside and out. For Shem, each detail of these divine specifications carried the weight of survival itself. As his father Noah received these instructions, Shem understood that their family's obedience would determine the fate of all living creatures. Day after day, year after year, the sound of hammers striking wood echoed across the plains. Shem, alongside his brothers Ham and Japheth, worked tirelessly under the scorching sun. The physical demands were immense, cutting massive timbers, hauling them into place, carefully sealing each joint against the coming deluge. But the spiritual weight was even greater. Each plank they laid was an act of faith, every nail driven a declaration of trust in promises yet unfulfilled. Imagine the scene, a massive boat taking shape on dry land far from any body of water. The local community's reaction was predictable: ridicule, scorn, perhaps even threats. The Bible suggests this period lasted 120 years, during which Shem and his family endured constant derision, yet their hands never faltered, their resolve never wavered. Through summer heat and winter cold, they continued building, their faith visible in every swing of their tools. As the ark neared completion, an extraordinary spectacle unfolded. Animals began arriving in pairs, every kind of creature, from the smallest insects to the mightiest beasts. Genesis records that God himself brought them to Noah. For Shem, this supernatural migration was the first tangible confirmation of the coming judgment. The air grew thick with anticipation as his family worked to organize and prepare space for each species. Then came the moment that would divide history. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. The first raindrops fell, raindrops in a world that had never known rain. For Shem, standing at the ark's entrance, these initial drops carried the weight of divine judgment and mercy intertwined. The biblical account tells us God himself shut the door. Inside, Shem and his family listened as the waters rose, bearing the terrible knowledge that the world they had known was ending. The sound of rain against the wooden walls became a constant companion, punctuated by the cries of the animals they were charged with protecting. This was no mere shelter, it was a cradle of future hope, carrying the seeds of earth's renewal. For 40 days and nights the waters rose, the ark lifted off the ground, rising above the highest mountains. Everything Shem had known, the landscapes of his youth, the communities he had grown up with, the world itself, disappeared beneath the floods. The magnitude of this moment is almost impossible to grasp. Shem and his family were now the sole survivors of humanity, floating above a drowned world. This extraordinary experience would shape Shem's entire life and legacy. The ark wasn't just about survival, it was about preservation for a greater purpose. Through this faithful son of Noah, God would establish a lineage that would ultimately lead to Abraham, to David, and finally to Jesus Christ himself. The ark became a powerful symbol of salvation through faith, a testament to the rewards of absolute trust in God's promises. As the flood waters began to recede and new horizons emerged, Shem and his family would face an even greater challenge, rebuilding civilization in a world wiped clean. But the lessons learned during the construction of the ark, faith, perseverance, and unwavering trust in God's word, would prove invaluable in the tasks that lay ahead. The real test of their faith was just beginning. Part 3. After the flood, rebuilding a world. Picture, if you will, a scene of absolute desolation. As the waters of the great flood finally receded, Shem and his family emerged from the ark onto a landscape transformed beyond recognition. The familiar mountains, valleys, and forests they had known were gone, replaced by a barren expanse stretching endlessly to the horizon. The air, once filled with the sounds of bustling humanity, now carried only the whispers of wind across empty plains. For Shem, this moment was both an ending and a beginning. Standing beside his father Noah, his brothers Ham and Japheth, and their wives, he faced the enormous responsibility of rebuilding human civilization from scratch. The biblical account tells us that God's first words to them in this new world were both a blessing and a command. Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth. Genesis 9:01. But what the scripture records in a single verse represented years of monumental challenges and profound transformations. The first days after leaving the ark were marked by a mix of wonder and trepidation. As the designated spiritual leader among his brothers, Shem worked alongside his father Noah to establish the first post-flood settlement. The Bible records that Noah planted a vineyard, but this simple statement belies the tremendous effort required to cultivate crops in soil that had been submerged for over a year. Shem and his family had to learn how to farm in this new environment, understanding new weather patterns and seasons that had been altered by the catastrophic flood. But the physical challenges of rebuilding were nothing compared to the emotional and spiritual weight Shem carried. Imagine the responsibility of being one of only 8 people tasked with preserving and transmitting the knowledge of God to future generations. Every decision, every tradition established, every story told would shape the spiritual foundation of all humanity to come. The tension in this new world reached its climax during what scholars call the vineyard incident. The Bible records that Noah, having planted a vineyard, became drunk from its wine and lay uncovered in his tent. The way Shem handled this crisis revealed his character and shaped the destiny of nations. While his brother Ham chose to mock their father's condition, Shem, along with Japheth, took a garment and, walking backward, covered their father's nakedness. This act of respect and honor led to a profound blessing that would echo through history. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. Genesis 9:26. This blessing marked Shem as the bearer of a special covenant relationship with God. Through his line would come the Semitic peoples, including the Hebrews, through whom God would eventually establish his covenant with Abraham. Archaeological evidence from ancient Mesopotamia confirms the emergence of distinct Semitic cultures during this period, validating the biblical account of Shem's influence in shaping early post-flood civilization. As communities began to form and populations grew, Shem faced the challenge of maintaining spiritual truth in an increasingly diverse world. The biblical record suggests that he lived an extraordinary 600 years after the flood, allowing him to witness the establishment of the first post-flood civilizations and the emergence of distinct cultures and languages. And so the Shem record must go on. This longevity gave him a unique perspective on humanity's tendency to drift away from divine truth, even after witnessing such dramatic evidence of God's judgment and mercy. The most poignant aspect of Shem's story during this period was his role as a living link between two worlds. He carried the memory of the pre-flood world, with its tragic descent into corruption, while simultaneously working to establish a new civilization founded on righteousness. His experience of both judgment and mercy made him uniquely qualified to guide the emerging human family in the ways of God. The culmination of this rebuilding period came with a crisis that would test everything Shem had worked to establish. As populations grew and technology advanced, humanity began to unite in pride against God's command to spread across the earth. The construction of the Tower of Babel represented a direct challenge to the spiritual. This crisis would force him to confront the reality that even a fresh start couldn't change human nature's tendency toward pride and rebellion. The significance of Shem's role in rebuilding the post-flood world cannot be overstated. His actions and leadership during this critical period laid the foundation for all future human civilization. The principles he established, respect for divine authority, the importance of family honor, and the preservation of spiritual truth, would influence not only his immediate descendants, but all of human history. As humanity faced its next great crisis at Babel, Shem's commitment to divine truth would be tested in new ways. The unity of the post-flood world was about to shatter, and with it would come challenges that would require wisdom beyond human understanding. But that's a story that deserves its own telling. Part 4. The Tower of Babel Crisis, a defining moment in human history. In the centuries following the Great Flood, humanity began to multiply and spread across the fertile plains of Shinar. This was a time of rapid growth and innovation, but also one that would test the very foundations of faith that Shem had worked so diligently to preserve. As the population grew, so did human ambition, and with it a dangerous pride that would lead to one of history's most dramatic confrontations between divine purpose and human arrogance. Picture, if you will, the vast Mesopotamian plain, where beneath endless skies humanity had begun to master new technologies. They had discovered how to make bricks from clay and secure them with bitumen, innovations that would revolutionize construction. But with this knowledge came a fateful decision that would alter the course of human history. "Come," the people said to one another, their voices filled with ambition and pride. "Let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth." These words, recorded in Genesis 11:04, reveal the deep-seated rebellion in their hearts. For Shem, who had witnessed the devastating consequences of human pride before the flood, these developments must have been deeply troubling. He understood that this wasn't merely about construction, it was about defiance. The people's desire to make a name for themselves directly challenged God's authority and violated His command to fill the earth. The tower itself was likely a ziggurat, a massive stepped pyramid that dominated the ancient Mesopotamian landscape. As it rose higher and higher into the sky, it became a symbol of humanity's hubris, a physical manifestation of their attempt to elevate themselves to divine status. Archaeological evidence suggests these structures could reach heights of over 300 feet, casting long shadows across the plains as testament to human ingenuity and ambition. But Shem, drawing from the wisdom gained through centuries of walking with God, would have recognized the dangerous parallel between this project and the pride that had led to the flood. The unity of purpose displayed in building the tower might have appeared impressive on the surface, but it was a unity forged in rebellion rather than righteousness. The crisis reached its climax when God Himself came down to observe the city and the tower. This divine inspection, described in Genesis 11:05, carries a note of dramatic irony. Despite humanity's best efforts to reach the heavens, God still had to come down to see their work. The Almighty's response would shake the foundations of human society. If, as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. In a moment that would reshape human history, God confused their languages, transforming their unity into chaos. Imagine the scene: workers suddenly unable to understand their colleagues, architects incapable of conveying instructions, the entire project dissolving into confusion and fear. The name Babel itself became a testament to this divine intervention, derived from the Hebrew word balal, meaning to confuse. For Shem, this moment would have been both a vindication of his faith and a profound challenge to his leadership. As the people scattered across the earth, fulfilling God's original command despite their resistance, Shem faced the monumental task of preserving the knowledge of God across these newly formed linguistic and cultural barriers. The aftermath of Babel marked a new phase in Shem's mission. No longer was it sufficient to maintain faith within a unified community. Now he had to find ways to transmit divine truth across language barriers and growing cultural divides. This crisis, while devastating to human pride, actually served to fulfill God's purpose of spreading humanity across the earth and established the foundation for the diverse nations that would emerge from Shem's lineage. As the dust settled on the plains of Shinar and humanity dispersed across the earth, Shem's influence would take on an even greater significance. Through his descendants, the knowledge of the one true God would spread across countless languages and cultures, setting the stage for the emergence of the great Semitic nations, and ultimately, the fulfillment of God's covenant promises. Part 5. Legacy of Nations. As the dust settled from the Tower of Babel's confusion of languages, Shem stood at the threshold of an unprecedented era. His role would transcend that of mere survivor. He was about to become the patriarch of nations that would shape the course of human history. Picture the landscape of the ancient Near East, a vast expanse stretching from the Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf. Here, Shem's descendants would establish some of the most influential civilizations known to mankind. Through divine providence, his lineage branched into 5 great streams: Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram, each destined to forge their own destiny in the tapestry of human history. The Elamites, descended from Shem's firstborn, established themselves in what we now know as Iran. Archaeological evidence reveals their remarkable achievements. They developed one of the world's earliest writing systems and built cities that would rival the grandeur of Babylon. Yet their greatest contribution wasn't in stone or clay, but in preserving elements of the ancient knowledge passed down from their forefather Shem. But it was through Ashur that we witness perhaps the most dramatic manifestation of Shem's legacy. The Assyrians, taking their name from this son of Shem, would rise to become one of the ancient world's most powerful empires. From their capital at Nineveh, they built a civilization that combined military might with sophisticated culture. The biblical prophets would later speak of Assyria as both an instrument of divine judgment and a testament to God's sovereignty over the nations. However, the most profound thread of Shem's legacy runs through his son Arphaxad. Through this line would come Eber, whose name would give rise to the term Hebrew, and eventually Abraham himself. This lineage represents more than just a family tree. It carries the very promise of divine redemption. The biblical text meticulously traces this genealogy, demonstrating its significance in God's plan for humanity. Consider the remarkable precision with which Scripture records this lineage. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood, Genesis 11:10. Each generation is carefully documented, creating an unbroken chain that leads to Abraham and ultimately to Jesus Christ. This wasn't merely historical record-keeping, it was the preservation of humanity's hope for salvation. The Arameans, descendants of Shem through Aram, would also leave an indelible mark on history. Their language, Aramaic, would become the lingua franca of the ancient Near East, spoken by kings and prophets alike. Jesus himself would later speak this language, a living testament to the enduring influence of Shem's legacy. But perhaps most fascinating is how these diverse nations, all springing from one man, would interact throughout history. The Assyrians would conquer Israel, yet their histories remained intertwined by their common ancestor. The Aramaic language would preserve ancient wisdom while facilitating trade and diplomacy across the known world. Even today, modern genetic studies continue to reveal the deep connections between these peoples, confirming the biblical account of their common origin. Shem's influence extends beyond mere genetics or geography. His descendants became custodians of monotheistic faith in a world prone to idolatry. While other nations crafted gods of wood and stone, the Hebrew line maintained its dedication to the one true God, preserving the spiritual legacy Shem had received from Noah. The most profound aspect of Shem's legacy isn't found in empire or language, but in fulfillment. When God promised Abraham that through his seed all nations would be blessed, it was the culmination of a promise that began with Shem. The Messiah, Jesus Christ, would come through this very lineage, fulfilling Noah's prophetic blessing. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. This legacy continues to resonate today as millions trace their spiritual heritage through these ancient lines. The story of Shem's descendants reminds us that our lives too can impact generations we will never meet. As we explore the modern implications of this ancient legacy, we discover timeless principles about faith, purpose, and divine providence that remain remarkably relevant to our contemporary world. Conclusion. Relevance for today. The enduring legacy of Shem. Picture, if you will, a moment of profound silence in the ancient world. The great floodwaters have receded, and a single family steps onto untouched earth. Among them stands Shem, Noah's firstborn, his eyes scanning the vast emptiness before him. This isn't just a story from distant antiquity, it's a powerful metaphor for the challenges we face in our modern world. Let me take you deeper into this narrative. Imagine being Shem, watching as your father Noah plants the first vineyard in the new world. The sweet scent of fresh earth mingles with the promise of new beginnings. Yet beneath this hope lies an unsettling reality. The same human nature that corrupted the pre-flood world still exists. The biblical account tells us that shortly after this new start, humanity would once again turn from God's path, culminating in the Tower of Babel incident. This mirrors our contemporary struggle. Like Shem, we stand at a crossroads between faith and secular culture. Consider how he maintained his beliefs while watching the world around him embrace idolatry. The book of Genesis records that while nations were being scattered and new languages created at Babel, Shem's line remained faithful to the one true God. This wasn't mere coincidence. It was the result of intentional choices, daily decisions to honor the covenant despite mounting cultural pressure. The tension escalates when we examine Shem's role during the vineyard incident. Picture the scene. Noah, having become drunk from the vine's fruit, lies exposed in his tent. Ham, Shem's brother, chooses mockery and disrespect. But Shem, along with Japheth, takes a garment and walking backwards covers their father's nakedness. This moment, seemingly simple, carries profound implications for our modern understanding of honor, respect, and moral choice in a world that often scorns traditional values. What makes this story particularly relevant is its parallel to our current cultural moment. Just as Shem had to navigate the rebuilding of civilization while maintaining his faith, we too face the challenge of preserving our beliefs in an increasingly secular society. The biblical narrative shows us that Shem's influence extended far beyond his immediate family. His lineage became the foundation for the Semitic peoples, including the Hebrew nation through which God's redemptive plan would unfold. The story reaches its climax in an unexpected way, Despite living for 600 years and witnessing the rise and fall of nations, Shem's greatest legacy wasn't in grand achievements or mighty conquests. Instead, it was in the quiet, consistent transmission of faith from one generation to the next. The biblical genealogies meticulously trace his line through to Abraham, demonstrating how one person's faithfulness can impact centuries of human history. This brings us to the heart of why Shem's story matters today. In a world where traditional values are often challenged and faith is frequently marginalized, his life offers a blueprint for maintaining spiritual integrity while engaging with a changing culture. The archaeological record confirms that the ancient Near East was a melting pot of religions and ideologies, yet Shem's line maintained their distinct identity and beliefs. Let me explain why this matters so profoundly. When we examine the cultural pressures Shem faced, the spread of idolatry, the building of the Tower of Babel, the division of languages, we see striking parallels to our modern challenges: technological isolation, moral relativism, and cultural fragmentation. Yet Shem's response provides a timeless template: unwavering faith coupled with engaged cultural presence. As we conclude our exploration of Shem's story, consider this. His legacy wasn't built on extraordinary moments, but on daily choices to honor God's covenant. In our own lives, we face similar choices. Will we, like Shem, choose to maintain our faith while engaging constructively with the world around us? Will we become bridges of blessing to future generations? The relevance of Shem's story extends beyond religious significance. It speaks to fundamental questions about identity, purpose, and legacy in a rapidly changing world. As we face our own cultural challenges, perhaps the most important lesson from Shem's life is that faith, when lived with conviction and grace, can influence generations yet unborn. The story of Shem challenges us to consider: what legacy are we building? How will our daily choices impact those who come after us? In a world that often feels as uncertain as the post-flood landscape, Shem's example reminds us that one person's faithfulness can indeed shape the course of history. As we conclude our journey through the remarkable story of Shem, let's reflect on the profound lessons that resonate across millennia. Shem's life teaches us that extraordinary impact doesn't require extraordinary circumstances. It demands unwavering faith and consistent choices in daily life. Through floodwaters and new beginnings, through the building of nations and the preservation of truth, Shem's story reminds us that one person's faithfulness can echo through generations. Think about it. Every choice he made, every truth he preserved, every value he passed down shaped the course of human history. So, here's my challenge to you. In a world that often feels as chaotic as the post-flood landscape, what will be your legacy? How will your daily choices impact the generations that follow? Like Shem, you stand at a crossroads between faith and compromise, between lasting impact and temporary comfort. The choice is yours, but you don't have to make it alone. This community is here to support and encourage you on your journey. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How does Shem's story connect with your own life? What challenges do you face in maintaining your faith in today's world? Your perspective might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. If this exploration of Shem's life has sparked questions or insights, don't keep them to yourself. Join the conversation in the comments section. Perhaps you're wrestling with similar challenges in your own faith journey, or maybe you've discovered parallels between Shem's time and our modern world. Your voice matters in this ongoing dialogue. Consider sharing this video with someone who might need encouragement in their faith journey. Sometimes the stories of ancient faith can provide exactly the perspective we need for modern challenges. Before you go, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude for joining me in exploring this powerful story. Your presence and engagement make these deep dives into biblical narratives possible and meaningful. If you haven't already, take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. We're building a community dedicated to understanding and applying these timeless truths in our modern world. Each week we uncover new insights from ancient wisdom that can transform our lives today. Let me leave you with this thought. Just as God used Shem to preserve truth and build nations, He can use your faithfulness to impact your sphere of influence. Your story, like Shem's, is still being written. Until next time, may you walk in faith, live with purpose, and leave a legacy that honors God. Thank you for being part of this journey. I'll see you in our next exploration of biblical wisdom for modern times. Remember, every great legacy begins with a single step of faithfulness. What will yours be?